I've done a lot of Overdrive demos, Overdrive shootouts and comparisons, but something that keeps coming up and I keep getting asked or seeing in comment sections and threads is, well, why should I bother buying some of these newer, more modern, modded or updated tube screamer or boost type pedals when the old versions exist? I can still go out and buy a tube screamer anywhere and still get crushing metal tones. Well, I thought I'd dive into that and we do a little comparison and kind of look into that. So, why should you maybe buy some of the more modern stuff? Personally, the more modern stuff is typically more aggressive. It's been voiced for what we're trying to get out of amplifiers. They're typically tighter, or at least have the ability to be tighter and cut off more low end, which is especially good for extended range. I like to play on 7 strings and lower tune guitars. So that really helps, but if anybody's playing even lower than I am, or playing on an 8 string or 9 or any of the other crazy numbers that people have nowadays, they're definitely going to need something tighter than the old school. You definitely want to have more upper mid-range cut and aggression, and that's something that I feel like a lot of the older pedals just don't do quite as well as the new modern stuff. And it's always good to have more features. That's just my personal take on it, but that doesn't mean the old pedals are bad either. And I was kind of interested in this as well. How do the old pedals compare to the new pedals? So I took a Boss SD1, which has been used by tons of thrash guys, a lot of metal guys, especially in the 80s and 90s, and you'll still even see it on people's boards today, boosting, 6505s and dual Rex and stuff. I took an Ibanez TS9 tube screamer, definitely a classic. Tons of metal guys have and still use this pedal. And I was recently loaned a Maxon Apex 808, and I decided to include that as well because the Maxon 808 is maybe one of the most widely used metal boosts of all time, and the Apex is kind of a culmination of everything that sounded good about vintage and contemporary 808s all in one pedal. So I thought that that would cover a lot of ground since there are a lot of variants of the 808. I also included the Earthquaker Devices Plumes, which has become somewhat of a modern classic. It has more clipping options, they changed out the chipset on it, and they adjusted the tone sweep to make it wider and more usable than a standard tube screamer. It has more low end, has more top end, you can dial in a lot more in between. I have the Savage Drive version 4 from Aris Effects. Now the Savage Drive has maybe been the most consistent boost on my board the past half of a decade. I think for a lot of metal guys it's become a modern classic as well. It has individual controls to control how much upper end bite you have, as well as how much low end cleanup you have. And it has way more volume than a standard tube screamer. And then I also included something that's become very popular, very widely used, and very well loved and regarded. That is somewhat of a Swiss Army knife of overdrive pedals. It has switches to control clipping, how much gain you're using, your low and top end, everything you can control, a clean blend, everything you could need out of the pedal. So what I really wanted to see here was how these stack up against each other in a mix and out of a mix. And I didn't want to just go into one amplifier. I'm going to go into my 50-watt Stealth and my dual rectifier. The Stealth is a lot more contemporary, much more modern metal sounding, and the dual rec is a lot more, it's a dual rec. Everyone knows what a dual rec sounds like. It's very 90s metal, very loose on the low end, definitely needs a lot of help with a boost to get tighter and more aggressive. And we're going to hear the in mix and out of a mix. So as you can see, pretty interesting. I mean, the old drives hold up. I was actually really surprised by the Boss SD1. I mean, this is a $50 pedal, little yellow overdrive everyone's had at some point or tried, and it's super accessible, and it's still pretty aggressive and mean. It'll get the job done if you're in a pinch. And the Apex sounded great. The Maxons always sounded great. I had no doubts at all that this was going to sound awesome on a metal amplifier. I mean, we've been hearing that on metal amps for years now, decades. The TS9 I actually felt was a little bit flat. It wasn't terrible, it'll do, but in comparison to the SD1 and the Maxon especially, it just kind of felt a little bit flat. The Plumes, as I said before, has more low end to it, so it didn't get as tight as, say, the Maxon or the SD1 or the other two contemporary pedals. But it would definitely be great as a lead boost. You could hit this on, get more saturation, have nice thick lead tones. I know Mick Thompson from Slipknot uses it for that purpose. So that brings me to the Savage Drive and the Dire Wolf. Now these two were undoubtedly the most tight and aggressive, and they could have gotten even tighter and more aggressive. Out of all of them, they had more volume on tap than all the other pedals. I think that these are a lot more specialized and really show why people are gravitating away from some of the older Tube Screamer and Overdrive type pedals, more to these boutique, really specialized, really focused pedals that are getting that modern sound that they want. That being said, some people may not want that. And all of these pedals are honestly great in their own way. I'm not saying anything is better or worse than anything. I'm just trying to point out that these are going to have different uses and are all great. They're all fantastic pedals. I mean, there's a reason that the Maxon 808 and the TS9 Tube Screamer and the SD1 are still around and are still legends and are still used by thousands and thousands of players. I'm curious to know which one you guys thought was maybe the best one or the worst one or best for the sound you want, or which one was the most surprising to you. Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching. Stay metal.